Last week, an Alberta judge released a decision finding that the citizen initiative petition organized by the group Stay Free Alberta on the issue of Alberta separation is unconstitutional because, in the judge's view, there was not adequate consultation done with the First Nations band about the potential effect of the petition on their treaty rights.
The East is feeding off the West, and we can't afford it anymore. We're going broke, and we're hurting in the West, and nobody's listening.
Do you think that Albertans and Western Canadians are in a situation that is otherwise known as taxation without representation? Syd Fizzard for Rebel News here in Airdrie, Alberta. As you know, the independence movement in Alberta has been the talk of the town basically since Prime Minister Mark Carney has been re-elected as the Liberal Prime Minister of Canada. Premier Danielle Smith has recently made some announcements, much like Mark Carney, in regards to the referendum that's to be taking place and the sentiment with regards to working with the federal government currently on energy projects. Those things are a factor, but let's find out what these Albertans have to say here in Airdrie for Alberta's independence.
The fact is that between the Forever Canada petition requesting a referendum on Alberta remaining in Canada and the Stay Free Alberta petition requesting a referendum on leaving Canada, approximately 700,000 Albertans have signed a petition requesting a vote on this issue.
It's hard to go 30 seconds without hearing somebody honk in support of you guys. Is that a big difference, do you think, from previous months?
When we first started doing this, it was the exact opposite. Back in January, when it was minus 30 outside, we were getting people fingering us all the time, right? Or no reaction whatsoever. Now, listen to this. It's insane.
Everybody is still pro-independence that I know, and I think it's building. I'm seeing more flags go up in my neighborhood that we never saw before. We're getting a lot of attention, and the negativity is dwindling.
But I can I finish my please? Look, is it helpful to ask these fundamental questions? No, it's not helpful. Of course, it's not.
It is for freedom, for Alberta, hopefully for all Canada. Wake up. I think if some of the people, they probably just get some misinformation, or they got a CV shot, maybe their brain got a fog, I don't know. But if you wake up to whatever happened around you, then you should be worried.
And what is it that, maybe people in Ontario don't understand that an Albertan is worried about?
Oh, for example, the firearm. They want to grab the rifle.
With the way that the feds are operating, we don't really have any choices or very, very much representation in Western Canada.
If you get any kind of representation at the federal level, then what happens? They do backroom deals where people floor cross. They do a complete 180 on their belief system and their policies. And it's just crazy how this is going on right before our eyes, but we're turning into a communist nation.
We need to get the word out. We need to show the blue. We need people to see that they're not the only people. The crowd that we're seeing on the highway driving by and honking at us, it enlightens us.
And what the government has done with our money over the years and what we're still allowing them to do, it's not a crime, it's an atrocity. And it hasn't been lately. It's worse lately. It's way worse lately. You can't afford during this time, for the sake of your kids, to not be educated. You can't.
You look at how much they spent going to Ukraine, how much they spent during COVID, all these things. And all they're doing, they come up with these cute little names, cute little programs, but what they're really doing is pilfering the money out of this country. And then the generations behind us, they're going to be left paying the bill for this, and it'll never happen. So economically, we're decimated. We'll never recover. Alberta could, but Canada won't.
And I think that they've got it systematically rigged so we'll never get our independence or we'll never be able to break free. But we're going to do all we can to try.
It is the job of the Prime Minister of Canada to unite the country. And as Prime Minister in waiting, I will begin that work myself. I will be campaigning across the province of Alberta, encouraging Albertans to stay as part of the Canadian family and encouraging nationwide unity for all Canadians.
He's not for separation either, Polyev, because he needs the East to win, right? And the numbers are all in the East, and that's the way the Senate is, the way the MPs are set up. We don't have enough representation in the West, so he really doesn't need the West.
Alberta's future will be decided by Albertans, not the courts. Our government will therefore be appealing the decision to Alberta's Court of Appeal and, if necessary, the Supreme Court of Canada. But this process will take many months and possibly years before being addressed by those higher courts. In the meantime, under our legal system, this troubling court decision is binding law in Alberta until it is successfully appealed. This means that it is unlikely the courts will permit Elections Alberta to hold a binding provincial referendum on separation until this incorrect ruling is overturned or clarified. But there is another way to hear from Albertans while we wait for our legal appeal to be heard. That is why I'm announcing today that I will be requesting our government add an additional question to the October 19th referendum vote announced previously. The additional question will be, should Alberta remain a province of Canada? Or should the government of Alberta commence the legal process required under the Canadian Constitution to hold a binding provincial referendum on whether or not Alberta should separate from Canada?
And what do you make of Premier Danielle Smith and her recent public dialogue with regards to the referendum and the changes and the court ruling that might be preventing some further action?
I don't understand where she's going with it, because she knows that you can't change, constitutional stuff with her referendum questions. It seemed like she was possibly giving us a fair shake at doing this by lowering the threshold for the amount of signatures required. And then the other night, I don't know. For the first 30 or 40 seconds, she had me going. I thought she was going to announce our question, and then she flipped it on us.
She's doing what she's got to do. I watched the town hall this morning before we came here, and literally, I've always said that if she didn't want us to be doing this, we would have been shut down a long time ago. She's always opened the door for us to move forward. Again, that's what she did with that. If we would have put a question on the ballot, the courts would have struck it down before we even got to the election day, right? So she's struck a balance where we can answer that question for her, then they can consult with the Indigenous people, right? And then after that, they can put forward our question or a question that will to the House of Commons so that they can actually say yes or no or modify it to make it good for the Clarity Act.
Well, I remember where I was when I heard that she'd crossed the floor the first time, and now I feel like she's crossed the floor a second time. So I feel like she's bought, and I don't really trust her. I was starting to gain trust again for her, but my trust has been severed now.
It's, the Premier has proposed this, the question and other questions with it. As I said earlier, Tom, we will look at, we will discharge our responsibilities, look at consistency of the question about a question, if I can put it that way, on separation, our consistency of that with the Clarity Act.
The whole point that Canada is naturally governed by the Liberal Party is our biggest issue. They set this country up so that there's no way that if the Ontario and Quebec, if the center of the country doesn't say that it's good to go, it's not going to go. We have no right. We've been set up as servants for the country, right? So until we actually open up the Constitution one way or the other, this is really the only way that it can be done by the way it's written. Once we've opened up the Constitution, we can possibly save Canada. Who knows how it'll go? We won't know until we enter into the negotiations. Once we get into the negotiations, if they don't do what we believe is a fair and honest negotiation, then we get to do whatever it is that we need to do.
Revamp the National Energy Program. My dad had to close his shop and retire early because the taxes were so stringent and so ridiculous that you couldn't survive. And I have done some research and some digging into this, and he wasn't the only one. It's not that his business was on the cusp of folding. He was a very successful businessman, and he did well. And he provided for 6 kids. We had a lake lot, we had a house. We would never wanted for anything. And for him to be that heartbroken and he had to close his own business, when I heard about it, it was like, Dad's retiring? He retired early because of Pierre Elliott Trudeau. And then his son came in, and Canada really fell on its head when Junior got elected. And I just remember thinking, oh, I'm glad my dad isn't here to see this, because he would be rolling over right now. People have amnesia, or they don't go back, to the 1980s and think what that National Energy Program has done against Canada. And a Western Canada, really, because the East is feeding off the West, and we can't afford it anymore. We're going broke, and we're hurting in the West, and nobody's listening. And we just pray that something, somehow, some way, we'll get somebody to hear us.
I'll finish with this, which is that you look around the world. I travel around the world. I see, and the world is in pain. most countries don't think that they're headed in the right direction.
Let me know in the comments, what do you think is next for Alberta's independence movement? And do you think that Albertans and Western Canadians are in a situation that is otherwise known as taxation without representation thanks to our federal Liberal government? Let me know in the comments. For Rebel News, I'm Syd Fizzard. IndependenceReports.com is where you have to go if you want to see our latest on Alberta's separatist movement. You can follow that at IndependenceReports.com.